We're going to have a rather unstructured conversation, and I will open up the floor to these young men. And gents, the first question is, what is democracy?
Jeez, I'm not sure who's going to take it. The smart guy with the lab coat, maybe.
Oh my word. Oh my word. Okay, let me take it and start the conversation. I think that democracy is a good system of governance if you have enough power sharing between the civilians and the politicians and the elites. So if there's a smaller gap between them, the system can work because there's an accountability mechanism which really exists. But what we're seeing in SADC is not particularly this dream of democracy or the best version of democracy. What I think we're seeing here is some version of a bastardization of democracy, and it then becomes an illusion more than anything else. And I'm going to break that down a little bit, why I'm saying that. In SADC, we have these entities that are known as dominant party states. In Namibia, you've got SWAPO. In Zimbabwe, you've got ZANU-PF. In Botswana, you've got the Botswana Democratic Party. You've got the MPLA in Angola. All of these parties have basically been running the show since independence, right? And in South Africa, we've got the ANC. I think South Africa is a bit of an anomaly. I'll talk about it to the end. But the challenge that exists when you have these dominant party states is that you begin to have this we will rule until Jesus comes back attitude. You begin to have this us versus them attitude. You begin to have almost a peasants versus elites attitude, which you see in a lot of these countries. You see in the way that politicians deal with civilians. They are big men. They must have convoys. They must have all of these amenities that attach to power, and the civilians be damned. That's what I think is a big challenge and why I say democracy becomes an illusion. The other side of the equation is you then get, they're not necessarily called oligarchs, but you do end up with all of these oligarchs who benefit from crony capitalism in SADC states. And what then happens is that they fund the politicians give them deals, and then you end up with a situation where there's zero accountability because there's a power disparity between the civilians and the powerful people. So last year, before the Zimbabwean elections happened, Al Jazeera did this big documentary where they exposed the corruption of the Zimbabwean government, that there's a lot of gold that is being illegally sold, and all of the people who were implicated kept their jobs. If you check now, they are still posting lavish cars, lavish lifestyles, the very same people who were named by name in the documentary, showing that the ZANU-PF government is so comfortable in their power that they don't give a damn. And they know that there's such a big power asymmetry between them and the people that nothing is ever going to change. And as a result, they don't care, right? Same applies to a degree if you look at what happened in Namibia. You know, the fish rot scandal came up. A few ministers were arrested. But the implications of the fish rot documentary by Al Jazeera as well was that the president was involved. But he died in power. And when he died, he was still being celebrated as a liberator, as a great man, when his government was corrupt and ineffective. And it's very likely right now that they're still going to be the ruling party when they have the election. So there's a bit of an illusion, I think, to the democratic process in the African space, which is why I think that you've seen people becoming attracted to this idea of coups. There have been a few coups in Africa, and people have been very welcoming of the idea of, hey, there's a coup. You know, in Chad, in Burkina Faso, in Niger, several places where the military just said, enough is enough, we're taking over. The global community thought the public is going to be angry and they're going to stand up for democracy. But the public were like, screw democracy, we don't care about it. We actually comfortable with the fact that these people were removed. And part of that came from the fact that there was a resentment which had been harboring for so long because people had felt powerless for so long that they were happy to screw the powers that be, even if it may have meant screwing themselves over as well. I think Guinea is the example, not Chad per se. But why did I say South Africa is different? I think that there's still a unique opportunity in South Africa for South Africa to follow the path of Ghana and Zambia, not necessarily the path of Zimbabwe. And that's going to depend, I think, significantly on how the ruling party either handles defeat or handles this particular election. It's not so much in our hands, but I think that will really be a test of what is the quality of democracy in South Africa. Why do I say there's still a uniqueness to this media landscape? In Zimbabwe, this already would have been shut down. Like, it wouldn't have happened. There would be somebody taking names. We would all find ourselves in some kind of a prison cell within 3 to 4 weeks because we participated in some kind of a discussion about democracy, right? That's the extent of the autocracy, so to speak. But in South Africa, you have this sophisticated media landscape where Gareth Cliff can say whatever he says about Cyril Ramaphosa and be fine, where Rob Hersov can call whatever minister he wants, any manner of names, and he'll be fine. There's obviously, it's not a perfect system, but the fact that you have this media landscape and you have this power disparity sometimes, there are still enough elites and enough of the middle class for the ANC to still have respect for people to a degree, and I think that preserves the integrity of the vote. When they don't care, when they know that they can beat you with buttons, shoot you, and do whatever they want, that's when democracy is at risk. So I think there's a unique opportunity in South Africa at this particular point, and the separation of the army from the politicians, I think, is also something that helps. Because in other countries, there's a very close relationship between the military apparatus as well as the political apparatus. And in fact, in other elections, military generals will be commenting in the media at a time like this to say, no, this guy, we're never going to follow him. That guy, he can forget it. And this guy is never going to have a chance during an election season. And that's the kind of thing that is not yet, or I don't think will happen in South Africa. So I think that it is a strong system of government where it works, where you have a power balance. I think it's mostly illusory in the African space because of the power imbalances. I think the dominant party state issue is a problem, but I do think that South Africa has a unique opportunity now. The polls indicate that the ANC may not be able to hold on to a majority. So the question then becomes, if they lose, if they get 39, are they going to walk away from power, from perks, from privileges? Because the ANC is not just the politicians in parliament, it's also a lot of the ANC cadres who are in the bureaucracy, who are vulnerable to a change in administration, who are vulnerable to investigations by a robust investigations department, which wants to actually say, in Gauteng, what was actually stolen in the last 30 years? There are many people in many departments who are worried at this particular point. So a transition in power is not just about, does Cyril Ramaphosa agree? It's also about what happens within the bureaucracy of South Africa. But I'm curious to see what happens this year.